I know we're gonna have a big crowd. Good morning, good morning. Good morning and welcome. Buenos días, buenos días. Bienvenidos. We're gonna get started in just a moment. So glad that you're here with us this morning. Y vamos a comenzar muy pronto. Letting all of our school site council members in this morning. We have officers, members, parents with us this morning. So glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us. Lots of great information today. Buenos días, bienvenidos a nuestros miembros del Consejo Escolar, miembros, presidentes, tenemos padres que vienen para aprender también. Gracias por estar aquí. Vamos a comenzar muy pronto. My name is Megan Guerrero. I am your Parent and Community Engagement Administrator. So glad to be able to greet you this morning. Buenos días, soy la señora Guerrero. Soy la administradora de involucramiento de padres en el Distrito Local Central y me da mucho gusto estar aquí con ustedes hoy día. Muchas gracias por unirse a este foro. Thank you so much for joining our webinar this morning. We're going to get started very soon. Here we go. I just want to welcome you again to our School Site Council training. Before we start, I want to let you know that this session will be presented in English and will have simultaneous Spanish interpretation. To listen to this presentation in Spanish or English, you would need to click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select the language preference for you. You will engage and listen to the presentation in the language you select. On your phone, you will click the three dots that say more and select language interpretation. Buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a nuestro foro para el capacitación de miembros de School Site Council. Antes de comenzar nuestra sesión, quisiera informarles que este foro se presentará en inglés y tendrá interpretación simultánea en español. Para escuchar esta presentación en español, deberá hacer clic en el icono del globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccionar el idioma que prefiera. Participará y escuchará la presentación en el idioma que usted seleccione. En su teléfono deberá hacer clic en los tres puntitos para buscar más opciones y seleccionar interpretación de idiomas. I'd like to also review some important points so we have an understanding on how to participate during today's session. During this webinar session, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of all our panelists. On your screen, you will see a Q&A talk button icon. You can type in your questions in the Q&A, and our panelists will answer your questions throughout the presentation. At the conclusion, we will answer questions live as time and opportunity permits. And also, this session will be video recorded. For all of our staff members that are joining us this morning, happy Saturday morning to our school staff members, site council members. If you have not filled out the registration form, that's how we're tracking your participation today. So for our school staff, school site members, please use this link to sign in and register. If you already registered, you're good to go and we can track your participation today. Please use this registration form so that we know that you're here. There it is. Okay, thank you. It's in the chat. Please make sure school staff, school site members fill out the registration form. And take a look at our program for today. We have a tight-packed program for you, lots of great information. We are going to hear from experts in our programs from federal and state programs, some workshops that we have today that I will introduce to you following our federal and state education program presentation, and some important information to build your capacity to make decisions at your school site. Now, I want to say, you could look at this schedule. We don't have any programmed breaks built in. So we trust you as adults to take those breaks as you need to get up, move around, take care of any needs that you have this morning. So please do that throughout the session. And we know that you are working responsibly to get the information that you need. And now I would like to introduce to you Mr. Andre Spicer, who is our local district central superintendent designee, here to kick us off this morning. Thank you, Mr. Spicer, for joining us, and thank you for your leadership.
Well, and thank you, Mrs. Guerrero, and good morning to all of our families. And I just want to tell you all, thank you so much, not just for being here this morning, but for being willing to serve, on school site council. Congratulations to all of you who have been elected. I am Andre Spicer, and I'm currently serving as the interim superintendent or the superintendent designee for local district central, home of the champions. And it's funny because I used to be on school site council as a parent and as an employee. And then I worked with Title I offices at Federal State Education Branch for years. And I know how important this work is. This is an opportunity for our families, not just to have voice and give input or provide input, but to be in the decision-making process, especially as it relates to the allocation of resources. It's very important that you, as the family members, as the parents, the community members, that you have an opportunity to provide that input, but make those critical decisions where we align resources to make sure that our students achieve, especially our students that are most vulnerable. So I want to thank you for your willingness to do that, to spend the year with us as you have your meetings, as you have your dialogue, if it were, and then make those critical decisions together so that we can move student achievement along. So again, like I said, very important work, but it's also can be very fun work. You'll learn a lot about our systems. You'll learn a lot about our budgets. You'll learn a lot about what makes student achievement rise, because that is our ultimate goal. We want to make sure that our students are performing to their full potential academically, but also that their social and emotional wellness is at hand as well. So I want to thank Mrs. Guerrero, our PACE administrator, and her amazing team. I do feel like we have the best parent and community engagement team in Los Angeles, and also our Title I coordinators, Mr. Mari Barrios, and of course, Mr. Oscar Salas, and all of our partners at the Parents Branch for Los Angeles Unified School District and Federal State and Education Programs Branch. So again, welcome, and thank you so much. And with that, have a great Saturday, Mrs. Guerrero, and have a great day of training, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Thank you for that important reminder that at the core of this work, at the heart of this work, are our students. And if we go back to that every time, we will be headed towards the right decisions at our school sites and for all of our kids. Thank you again for being with us. Again, you are in the right place if you are logged into our school site council training today, building your knowledge and partnerships with our families and students to build equity. So thank you for being here. Next slide. Our training today is essentially part of our district's strategic plan. I'm sure by now you have heard of LAUSD's new strategic plan, and that for the next 4 years, Los Angeles Unified will focus on a singular goal: to ensure all students graduate ready for the world, to thrive in college, career, and life. By outlining that singular goal and a vision for achieving this goal, we can ensure that everyone who's part of Los Angeles Unified will be able to support and uplift our district together. We're doing this work together. We also, being ready for the world means our students will graduate with the skills and knowledge they need to live out their dreams. An important decision-making element in supporting this goal And most importantly, supporting all our kids is our school site councils. Next slide. The strategic plan has 5 pillars, and pillar 3 is what addresses our work in engagement and collaboration, which we know are key principles when you're forming any kind of group or committee or council. Engagement and collaboration is key. The school site council provides our district with a valuable opportunity to honor and act upon the multiple perspectives within our school communities to support students, staff, and families. It's part of the 4th priority within pillar 3, as you can see on the slide. If we take a look more closely, we see building strong relationships, accessible information within pillar 3, leading for impact, and as I was just mentioning, honoring perspectives within the many pieces of our school site council groups. One of the strategies that our plan identifies for addressing the honoring of perspectives is to establish advisory councils. This is part of our strategic plan, establishing them with students, families, staff, and other key partners. And that helps inform our plans at both the school and district levels. And that's why we're here today. So now to share more about the plan, that the school site council develops, I would like to invite my colleague at the Federal and State Education Programs Office to continue with our next learning piece as we learn about how we honor perspectives and do this work together. So please welcome Karen Ryback, and she will be joined by Dr. Tracy Calhoun. Welcome, Ms. Ryback.
Thank you very much, Ms. Guerrero. So I do want to say, for those of you that are brand new to the School Site Council, welcome and thank you for your leadership. And you may be wondering, what have you gotten yourself into? And so your primary responsibility is really to develop the school plan for student achievement. And this is a responsibility that is actually written into statute, education, ed code. And so you cannot delegate these responsibilities over to anyone else. That is your responsibility as a school site council member. But you certainly can enlist the help of others for this work. Next slide. So what are some of the things that you'll need to know in order to do this work? Well, you'll need to understand sort of what are any legal requirements related to developing the school plan and serving on the school site council. You'll want to understand the processes of data analysis and developing goals and identifying effective research-based strategies that are sure to work, monitoring that plan and evaluating it. You'll want to know what resources are available to you and what are the allowable uses of those resources. You'll want to know what are some of the program requirements connected to those funding sources. And you'll want to know sort of how does this fit in with our district goals that Ms. Guerrero just shared with us and our priorities district-wide. And finally, you'll want to know about how do we actually conduct ourselves as a school site council, and you'll be hearing later today about some parliamentary procedures that will help you to do that. And so the day has been planned to actually help you through all of this. Next slide. Now, it's important to note that almost all of you already have a school plan that exists, and you'll want to be looking at that school plan and actually seeing what does it say and making sure that you are implementing that plan. At the very same time that you are sort of monitoring the existing plan that you have, you're going to begin to start to develop next year's plan. And so when you look to see whether or not you've been successful, there's typically 3 questions to ask. If you find that you have not met the objectives or the goals that you have set, the first one is you want to make sure that your goals were actually based on very valid student assessment data, as well as an assessment of sort of what are the instructional practices that are being used at that school. Another question to ask is, did we choose the right activities, the right strategies that are steeped in research and proven to be effective? And then the last question to ask is, did we implement our plan in the way that we designed it? And did we do it in a timely manner? Next slide. So we have resources available to you. So when you walk away from today, know that there's things that are still available to you that you can check out. There are budget resources available. We've provided the link there. Parent Community Services has a very in-depth bulletin on this. And then my office, Federal and State Education Programs, also has resources and tools that you can use to help you do data analysis. Next slide. So I told you that you all probably already have a school plan. And so you'll be hearing more in depth about how you can find that school plan. Next slide. And how you can find the budgets that your school has. And so Marty and Oscar will be sharing that in further detail. Next slide. And so you're here on the School Site Council actually representing a group. Either you're representing teachers, or you're representing parents, or you're representing other staff. And so I want you to think about, what are some of the ways that you might learn about the perspectives of the group that you are representing. And so if you have ideas about how you might find out how other teachers feel, or other parents or other staff feel, please write that into the chat. We'd love to see that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tracy Calhoun.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ryback and Ms. Guerrero, for leading us through the first part of our session. Good morning, families of Local District Central, and happy Saturday. I think what I find to be one of the most enjoyable parts of this training is that it's such a collaborative effort. As Ms. Ryback shared, there's so many of you. All of our stakeholders are in one place at the same time, learning the same information so that you can take the information back and do good work for children. So what I'd like to do is start with the next slide. And I'm going to continue speaking a little bit about why the School Site Council is so important. The School Site Council's roots are deeply embedded within the civil rights movement, growing out of a time and place where different voices advocated for a seat at the decision-making table in the midst of very, very huge levels of inequality. So on this slide, in the first picture, what you see is that all of the opportunities, or the apples, are bent towards one child. And what was advocated for during this time was greater equality. So with the Title I program, it provided children and families with additional funds to have the same tools to get more opportunities. But when we look at the second picture, we find that giving the same ladder and the same bag to the kids to collect the apples didn't necessarily result in children doing as well as we wanted them to. So it really didn't result in kids getting more opportunities. So equal wasn't working the way that we thought it would. Around 2010, our conversation in education shifted to this notion of equity, not getting equal, but getting what every child needed based on data, right? So kids were getting what they needed, and we needed to identify and address inequality by customizing our support for them. But the opportunities are still not there. There are still more apples on the other side of the tree, and it is still bent towards one child. And so now we are taking the conversation of equity to different spaces and considering how to focus on justice as well, to consider how our tools and resources and the work of the school site council. Your job is to really look at and consider those additional resources that are provided to a school community to help its children get more opportunities to improve academic achievement. And so for this, our school site council needs all partners, all decision makers at the table to understand and be empowered about how to contribute their best thinking to make this happen. So it is definitely a collaborative effort. So let's focus in on how to support parents to participate. Next slide. So often, the way our parents learn about the work of the school site council is in partnership with our school staff. Our schools play a critical role in engaging our families to strengthen this partnership. And this is for the betterment of our school programs and to facilitate greater justice. Much like our thinking about the resources for our students has shifted over time, our understanding of how to empower parents have also shifted over time. And so we've learned that there needs to be intentional, planned out engagement opportunities of high impact that are linked to learning. That is critical. And the schools need to provide spaces for our families to contribute by co-leading and co-creating. This can build a family's understanding about school plans and strategies to reach goals and build agency for decision making in the school environment. So let's take a closer look at how all this ties together with the school site council as we move to our next slide. So we see 6 pictures here. And so the school site council's purpose is to have partners come together to ensure that all members have voice. And that's the first picture. Members all have voice. And remembering that every member has their own perspective, which takes us to the second picture. This diversity of perspective and contribution is what strengthens our decision making. And this causes us to have better understanding of our own opinions. And when we have to explain them, it brings us to our third picture, coming to consensus. That's a lot of work for our SSC. Coming to consensus means that we respect the voice of all and we move forward in one direction together. And we learn together and we learn how the systems work. And as we're doing that and we're reading data and understanding the important components of the school plan and how the funding works, we're able to build connections for our group's best thinking to surface. This allows for a cycle of continuous growth and improvement to do our work. Then the school site council can serve as the driver of our work, strengthening our roots, which creates a balanced and democratic process in the shared decision making. And it's strengthening our roots and our tree of equity and justice for all students. Next slide, please. So exactly how does the SSC honor all of the perspectives of all members and voice in these practices? We're going to introduce 2 structures that we will use to help ensure that all voices are heard, valued, and respected. Excuse me. One of the voices and structures that guides the SSC is parliamentary procedures. And this creates a balanced and democratic process of sharing decision making. Parliamentary procedures require that our SSC officers have specific roles and they know how to conduct the meeting. And anyone can be an officer. You may have already elected your officers. Their job is to facilitate the meeting so that the group's best thinking surfaces. And as a leading officer, the chairperson should be soliciting the voice of others, making sure that others' opinions are heard before sharing or voicing their own, and before voting. This allows other voices to surface. So our SSC officers co-develop the meeting agendas with the school personnel as a group. Parliamentary procedures require that everyone should have an opportunity to speak before anyone else gets a second chance. And voting can only happen if more than half of the members are present at the meeting. This ensures that it's not a tiny group of people on the council holding all of the power. The second structure, as we move to the next slide, that we use to guide our conversations in our meetings, excuse me, is the GREEN Act. The GREEN Act is a part of the California Education Code, and it must be followed in order to promote transparency and access for all. This includes members of the public who are not on the council, so that they too can better understand how to contribute their ideas and strengthen decision making. The GREEN Act requires that we provide non-members with access to documents that are reviewed and provided to members. It allows folks that are not on the council to share their opinions at the public comment item on the agenda regarding topics that are pertinent to the SSC and what the SSC does. It also promotes orderly discussion and transparency by requiring posting and following of an agenda with a date, time, and meeting place at least 72 hours in advance. As you can see, these two structures really support our school site councils, and they ensure that we honor the perspective of all so that the council can fulfill its purpose. And so as we move to the next slide and we advance this Saturday, this beautiful Saturday, this day of learning about this important work, we want you to know that we are here with and for you. You have many people that you can contact, and you can start with your local district PACE team led by the fabulous Miss Guerrera. If you need additional supports, our office is also here. So we have provided the number to the Office of Parent and Community Services, as well as our wonderful partners with the federal and state education program. So what we're going to do, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And I'm going to hand it back off to Ms. Guerrero so we can continue with our day of learning. Thank you so much, team.
Thank you, Dr. Calhoun. Thank you, Ms. Ryback, for providing that context and information that's so important to our work as we are learning and growing our capacity. We are at, let's see, next slide. All right. In this next portion of our structure this morning, and if you just joined, again, my name is Megan Guerrero. I am the PACE administrator for Local District Central. Happy to host this session today. And I know that you can't see, but we have, getting close to 400 participants today from all over the city, all over our district, collaborating today to learn. So it's exciting to see the participation and from all of our stakeholders to be with us here today. So take a look at this slide. This gives you an overview of the next 3 parts of our training this morning. We have 3 workshop style trainings that everyone will get to participate in. The first one will be presented by one of our local district central Title I coordinator, Mr. Marty Barrios, and his topic will be about a plan for student success. And we're talking about our school plan, which is so important for guiding our work. He will be followed by our local district central Title I coordinator, Oscar Salas, talking about knowledge is power. That's true in our education world. We believe that at our core. So looking at Title I, school finance, and the school site council. And then we will have a third presentation, Rules Make It Right, help us remember those parliamentary procedures. Planning ahead helps us collaborate more effectively. And that will be led by Miss Angie Cardenas and Lisa Porter, who we're happy to have from Parent Community Services facilitating with us today. So these next 3 short sessions are going to build your capacity and learning around our plan, around our budget and financing, and around running our meetings and building our groups together, hearing those voices. So here we go. We are going to start with Mr. Marty Barrios, who is our first presenter for our workshop. So thank you, Marty, for being with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Guerrero, and thank you, Ms. Ryback and Dr. Calhoun, and also our Superintendent Designee, Mr. Spicer, for presenting the SSC meeting this morning. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share my screen. So Vilma, if you take a moment to allow me to share my screen. As mentioned, my topic for this morning will go over the school plan. And as Ms. Guerrero mentioned earlier, every school has a school plan. So whether you access it online or you have a document printed on paper or you have it electronically, every Title I school is required to have a school plan. So the next few moments, I'll be sharing with you more information about the school plan. And here are the 3 main important outcomes for today's presentation. I will help you understand what are the main components of the school plan. We'll see that there are many different areas that the school must address on the school plan. I will also guide you to how to download a copy, or you can always make a request for a hard copy or electronic copy from your school principal. And I know every school has a Title I designee. You can work with him or her to request a copy. But most importantly, we want to make sure you are part of the process of evaluating, writing, implementing, and monitoring your school plan, because the purpose is to help your students meet those grade level benchmarks to become grade level proficient. And the last one there is I will help you understand why you as a member of SSC develops a school plan. Not only is it required by law, but it also helps our students become successful in life, both career and college, after they finish high school. Now, the question is, what is a school plan for student achievement? It is a written document, a document that describes what is the school doing with their Title I program based on their student needs and also based on their funding. How they spend their federal funds should be tied to their student assessments, how students perform, and what those needs are, whether it's academically, in math or English, or it could be social emotional needs, or it could be based on attendance. So the purpose is to help students meet those goals. We have students who might need a little support, maybe in the classroom, they have intervention coordinators, perhaps they need additional time after school or on Saturday, maybe materials, helping them learn technology. So that is a way of using the Title I program funds to help target those students meet their needs. And the last one there is every year, you as a member of SSC should be part of the development of the school plan. As I mentioned earlier, some schools evaluate, in fact, all schools evaluate the school plan. SSC members help develop, write, implement, and also monitor. So these are key responsibilities of the SSC members. And we're here this morning to help you understand what your responsibilities are as SSC members related to the school plan. And as I mentioned earlier, not only is there a plan, but also a budget that my colleague Oscar will share in a few moments. Now, looking at the plan components, there are several goals and objectives. Schools, middle school and high school, right to graduation goal, elementary schools have the option. English language arts, as far as how are students performing on those assessments, whether they're state assessments or district assessments, and schools have their own assessments to determine if students are at grade level. Math, also for our EL population, are they becoming proficient in English? Are they reclassifying? And very important, parent and community. When I talk to principals and Title I designees, I always ask them, how do you work with parents as an equal partner? They have to be on the same page as you when you monitor student progress, determine what the next actions are, and how to expend Title I program funds to help meet those needs of those students. And very important, we've heard so many times, the students need to be in class every day. So attendance is very important. And some schools fund different counselors to do those home visits to address the needs of those who are chronically absent. So understand why there has to be a school plan. Not only is it the law, but also it's a way of helping schools implement those programs by having a written document that the community writes together. It also is a planning process to target the needs of our students, but we ask schools to identify who those students are. And the goal is for them to be college career ready after they finish high school. Schools are required to evaluate their plan. Some of you might be working with your school site councils. They know that they have an SBC evaluation due in a few days. And so they're looking at their plan. They're looking at what strategies they implemented. They're looking at your data of student performance. They're looking at their budgets, and they want to know, were they successful? Did they meet their objectives? So those are some of the components of the school plan. And also determining what the next steps are, how they will implement their future plan. You may have heard from some of your school principals and your Title I designees that every year schools write a plan, and so we're about the same time now to write our plan for next year. But we're always looking at the current year's plan to monitor the progress. Are they implementing what SSC approved? How are they spending those funds? And what are the effects? What are the results? And it's always tied to student data. Now, as Dr. Calhoun mentioned earlier, this is a continuous cycle of improvement. So we look at one area and going on to the next area and the following area, but always going back and seeing where we were before and how did we progress and how do we move forward, because it's always looking at our students, how they perform on those assessments, whether they're state assessments, district assessments, or school assessments that they monitor. Now, I'll give you a moment to look at this cycle of improvement, continuous cycle of improvement, how we go through one step to another. We'll take some time going over each one to help you understand how schools move from one section to another, whether they're doing a needs assessment, developing objectives, developing budgets that Oscar will go through in a few moments, and then to monitor the implementation. So first of all, here is the step-by-step process for you to download a copy of your school plan. When you go to the LAUSD homepage, you will go to Find a School, which will take you to the school directory. You will type down your school name and do the search. Your school will appear. And then once your school appears, you will have an option to download your current year's school plan. You have options to download previous years, but we want to focus on the current year. Once you click go, you will have a PDF document of your school plan that was approved by SSC, also by the school board. So here's a visual of LAUSD website, where you go to find a school, That will take you to another site. That site will take you to this option of clicking school directory. When you click school directory, that will take you to another site. And here you will type in your school name. Now, based on the school name, you may have multiple schools because different schools will be listed there based on what name you type in. And then once you click search, that will take you to their school site. And then there you'll have the option to download your 2022-2023 school plan, the current year's plan. Now here is what it'll look like. So there you have school plan for student achievement. Once you click that, that's where you will see different options to download different versions. But again, we're focusing on the current year, 2022-2023. Now, here's an image of the first page of a school plan. And as I said earlier, there are different components. There's graduation, there's ELA, there's math. You have the EL program. There's the parents section. There's also attendance. And as you see, this is page 1 of 60 pages of the PDF document that you can download from the website. So we'll take a moment now. I'm not sure. I know Diana and Oscar and Karen, you're here to maybe respond to some of the questions. So I'm just wondering, would it be a good time to maybe check to see where we are, or are we good to go? What do you think? Megan, Oscar, Diana, are there any questions that are dying for
Well,
answers?
no questions on the chat, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we'll move on. Here are the steps to developing your school plan. So as I mentioned earlier, school site council, that's a very important role to be in because you represent, whether you're a parent, you represent all the parents. As a teacher, you represent your teacher, and every school has an administrator, part of SSC. But we want you to be prepared to know how you can move forward with developing the plan. Ask questions. You need to ask questions to help you understand what is the process, why there's a school plan, what are the next steps, what do you look at? We talked about student data. We looked at developing objectives. Ms. Ryback mentioned strategies in the classroom. What are teachers teaching in the classroom, and how are students learning in the classroom? Because ultimately, their learning transfers over to different assessments. And when they're assessed, that shows learning from one year to the next. So as an SSC member, recommendation is to talk to school staff. Many schools have community reps. Talk to the community reps to ask them as far as what are some of the participation activities of members in school site councils, not just coming to the meetings once a month, but also being involved in other activities. And I know when I work with my colleague principals, they have their principal coffee with the principal, and they discuss a lot of issues during those meetings. Now, in secondary schools, I know middle school, it's optional, but for high schools, you have students. What about student voice? Their voice is important because they're the ones in the classroom. They're the ones learning with their teachers. They're the ones who are being assessed. And they're the ones who, with our task, we want to make sure they are college and career ready when they finish high school. So think of it as a community. We need to communicate. We need to work together. We need to ask questions. We need to feel comfortable moving forward because this is our responsibility. So other recommendations is talk to school staff. Some schools have a PSA counselor, pupil service attendance counselor. They target those with chronic absenteeism. You have your social worker or psychologist to address the social emotional needs of our students. They help support attendance to make sure that kids are healthy, both physically and mentally, to come to school prepared to learn. And if there are certain issues, sometimes the teachers will identify them and provide some referrals, but many schools fund these positions to help support that goal of attendance. Talk with other school staff to help you understand what are some of the assessments. What are the assessments that school uses to monitor student progress? If you go from one school to another, you may have different assessments. Of course, they always look at grades, they look at attendance, but when they assess their learning in English and math, they may have different ways. But we know all schools use interim assessments, but they may have different programs to monitor student progress. As Ms. Guerrero mentioned earlier, I am one of the Title I coordinators. Oscar, my colleague, is the other one. Feel free to ask us questions. We have our meetings regularly with our Title I designees. We help you understand what is the process for SSC members to move forward as responsible members. I also work with EL coordinators. They focus on the EL program. I work closely with Megan Guerrero because the PACE administrators, they support parent engagement when we work with our Title I designees. And so we have all of these support systems to provide those assistance to schools to help make sure those students are learning. That's our objective, that's our goal. So here are the different items, part of the school plan. Schools must do a comprehensive needs assessment where they look at data. Data comes from student assessments. An example is attendance. Attendance data is very important because we want our students in the classroom. We talked about different assessments. Elementary schools use DIBELS. All right, so these are different assessments that schools must use to monitor student progress. And then they set goals to help the outcomes of your students. So an example is if 50% of the students are at grade level, what about the other 50% who are not grade level? So school may decide, okay, we want to reach maybe 10% of our students who are not grade level. So potentially they're going from 50% to 60% proficient. And they're striving very hard to make it a higher number, over 70% to 80%, but they set goals. Now, very important is, like Ms. Ryback mentioned earlier, what are the strategies going on in the classroom to help students? And those strategies need to be evidence-based. Evidence-based strategies mean that they've worked in other areas, in other schools, in other locations that's been effective. And so it's good for some schools to share best practices because they've been successful, and for other schools to learn from them so that they can potentially implement some of those strategies at their school to help their students become successful as well. Now, very important is the next presentation. Oscar will talk about expenditures. Title I is a program that comes with federal funds because those funds are helping kids in the classroom. And number one, I tell principals, is to help improve instruction. So provide supports for your teachers, professional development, maybe time for planning, time for collaboration. So these are ways of spending money. Title I program to help improve instruction. And then also important is to determine, is what they're doing working? They have to monitor their implementation of those activities, make sure it's working, and they do evaluation. So every year they evaluate their plan. If what they're doing is working well, they continue implementing those strategies. But if they're not doing so well, they might rethink and potentially revise and modify those activities to do something that is evidence-based where it's been effective in other areas. So we went through the first item there in the cycle is conduct a needs assessment, competency assessment to determine student learning. So here it is, as far as what is the basis. It's to analyze student data, verifiable student data. And we all know that there's a SBAC, but that's done once a year. We ask schools to assess students on a regular basis. Different assessments are done quarterly. As you know, attendance is done daily. So if there's an attendance issue, school may address that with the parents and the students. If there's academic issues, then they might provide intervention. I always ask principals, what is in-class intervention like? Now, some students might need more time after school for tutoring, but very often intervention begins in the classroom. How are teachers teaching, providing supports in the classroom? And how is the school supporting those teachers provide those supports to their students? So the next step is developing objectives. Like I mentioned earlier, an example is that one school where 50% of the students are proficient and they want to increase it by 10%. All Title I schools must rely on the California dashboard. The dashboard will show results from the previous year's assessments on Smarter Balance assessments. But we tell schools not to wait until after those are published, because schools can do their own assessments, maybe monthly or quarterly. They look at those assessments. The Smarter Balance is done once a year, but schools can have their own assessments. So that's very important. Those are questions you might ask when you go back to a school. Ask them, what are the assessments the school is using to determine student learning? But very importantly, because it's part of the requirement, all Title I schools must refer to the California dashboard, because those are state assessments that all public schools have to follow. So here are some of the steps when schools describe their evidence-based strategies. So it has to be tied to some kind of objective. So here are some examples of strategies that schools can implement. Professional development. What kind of training is the school providing for teachers to help implement some kind of a strategy or a program? So sometimes after school, teachers stay to get training on a program. Some schools meet on a Saturday, sometimes grade level meetings. Next one there is classroom instruction. How do we know that the teachers need help in the classroom? So maybe doing some kind of survey, providing supports. So we have sometimes teachers observing other teachers with an effective activity that they can implement in their own classroom. I mentioned earlier interventions. Interventions begin in the classroom. If students are having difficulty learning a different application, perhaps the teacher might provide additional supports, a teacher assistant, or maybe small groups, or different programs they can implement in the classroom. And again, very important, building parent capacity. We always say parents should work with the school as equal partners. And you're all here to help understand what is the process of becoming an equal partner at the school site as a school site member. So looking at some of those examples, hopefully you're able to respond to the question of what is the school doing to help your student, your child or children become grade level proficient. Because if they do an assessment and they see that your child needs additional support, then you can always ask for those supports from your teacher or your administrator. So talking about evidence-based means those programs implemented in other areas have been effective. There is evidence. There is evidence that when a school implements a program, an example is Achieve 3000. It's a computer program schools fund. There's also Read 180. Read 180 is a computer program that teachers implement in the classroom to help students read better. There's also Accelerated Reader. Accelerated Reader is a program that schools purchase to help students become better readers. There's also IXL Math. IXL Math helps improve student learning in math. So I just gave you 4 examples that are evidence-based, and schools may opt to implement one of these or some of them, or something different that may be found on ESSA. ESSA has a list of those evidence-based programs that have been effective in other areas. So it's always good to know when you ask the school, what are some of the evidence-based interventions the school is implementing to help your students become proficient? And again, if 50% of the students are proficient in one area, that means the other 50% are not. And so what is the intervention they're providing for those students? So here are some questions for schools to use to help them identify what are some of the evidence-based interventions they can provide at the school site. And there's a link there that they can follow. It'll show them step-by-step and different programs that they can implement based on their needs. So the school knows what the needs are for their students, and they can implement those interventions. And here are some links to help schools identify some strategies, some interventions, some programs to help meet those needs of their students in the classroom. And some of these are programs that they can expend funds for because it provides training for teachers. They're computer programs that they can use in the classroom, also at home, maybe after school or on Saturdays. So I'll stop here for a moment. Diana, Oscar, was there any questions that you feel like I need to go over, or have you been responding to some of the questions? Or
Marty, this is Hector. I think we are getting a lot of questions regarding accessing the SPSA. I think it's pertinent to let everyone know right now about the issues that the district's experiencing.
yes, I mentioned that they have 3 options. Number 1, online, or option number 2 is to contact the school and get a hard copy, printed hard copy. That's the second option. So they wait until Monday to go to the school and request a hard copy. Or option number 3, they can email the principal or designate the school site, and they can email them a copy of the school plan. So they have 3 ways of obtaining a copy of the school plan if they cannot go into the LAUSD website.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, so I hope that clarifies or explains how you can access a copy of your school plan. I know working with schools, we have technical issues. They say, Marty, I can't access the school plan. I need a copy for my SSC meeting tomorrow. So I download a copy on my computer, I email them a copy, and they have a copy electronically of the school plan. So again, we have different ways of addressing different issues. Some of you are familiar with the computer issues that the district went through a few weeks ago. So fortunately, there are different ways of obtaining a copy of your school plan. So the next step is developing budgets. As you are aware, Title I federal program has a budget to help support those needs of your students. The focus is for low-performing students, but also for those who qualify for free reduced lunch. So that's the purpose of Title I, is to close the achievement gap between those who are less well off. So these are some of the items to think about, that the expenditures has to be tied to the findings from the needs assessment. So if the school discovers the students are performing well in English, maybe 80% of the school performing well, but then math, they're performing 40%, then it's tied to the priorities of math to help increase math learning. You also have to ensure that there are the resource inequities that the school has to address to ensure that they provide those supports for their students. So it's all about the budgeting and tying it to the district allowabilities. So 3 very important points about the Title I program when they spend their funds. Number 1, it must be necessary. Necessary to spend funds on a different activity based on a need. Like I said, maybe English they're doing well, but math they're doing poorly, so spend funds on math programs. Must be necessary, tied to the needs of their students. The second one must be reasonable. Reasonable as far as the expense. And so I always give the example of technology. I know some schools, some teachers like using MacBooks. MacBooks cost a little over $1,000. But then some schools, they think about buying a Chromebook because a Chromebook is about $400. So how many can you buy if you have a certain budget of each computer? So think about the price, what's reasonable, and then must be consistent with the rules, must be allowable. They must allow them to expend those. And again, the focus is classroom instruction, professional development, and also building parent capacity at the school site. So these are the ways that the school expends their Title I program funds. And so we want them to realize that how schools expend their Title I programs should be focused on the needs of their students and how to help them become grade level proficient. So we want you to think that Title I program is a program to help students in the classroom, not a funding source. It's not just money given to the school. It is a program to help your students become grade level proficient, to become college career ready after finishing high school. Not just a budget, but a program, think of it, instructional program to help improve classroom instruction, provide interventions for students, and also to work with the parents. So that's the thinking that we want all members to be familiar with, because it's all about student performance, student assessments, student learning, and all about being college and career ready for our students. So the next step is to monitor, implement the school plan. And what are those steps? And so ongoing monitoring, there are some questions. In fact, these are questions you might ask when you go back to school on Monday or at your next SSC meeting. Ask them about their objectives. If they said they're going from 50% to 60% proficient in a grade level, are they meeting that? What about those strategies and those actions? Are they implementing what they said? They said they would provide training for teachers on an application. Are they providing that training? If the school wrote an activity, are they doing what they wrote? Because SSC approved that activity. So questions to ask. Other questions when you go back to the school site, those strategies, did it lead to helping improve student learning? School may have different strategies, multiple strategies. Which one worked? Maybe some didn't work. I know some schools budget after school tutoring, and then I ask schools, so how many students came to tutoring? And sometimes very few students come. And my next question is, what kind of in-class interventions do you provide? Because if those students aren't coming after school for extra learning, you have to provide interventions in the classroom. And then the evidence, what evidence do they have to show that their students are learning? What kind of assessments, what kind of data do you have to show that they're learning? And then based on the results, if things are going as they plan, then they continue But if they're not getting the results, what might they change now or for next year? So these are different things. If they spend money on after-school tutoring, but you have less than 20% students coming, then you might focus on during the school in-class interventions. So looking at some of the data, is the school plan written based on student data? That's very important. What about the students and the objectives? We ask them to write SMART goals. Those are specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and timely when they're out their objectives. And then to show the evidence, is it effective? Are those strategies being effective in helping those students learn? So other questions, supplemental. Title I is a supplemental program. It has to be implemented above and beyond what the school must perform or must provide to their students. So the school gets state funding, they get additional funding from the state, but based on the Title I program, there's federal programs that are supplemental to the core. And then very important, if there are limited resources, we want to make sure that there's great impact on those students. So make sure that there are ways to measure those programs that they implement, ways to show that the students are learning, that they're increasing their proficient level, becoming grade level as they're expected, because students, we want to make sure that when they finish high school, they are college and career ready. And then another important part is looking at last year. What did they do last year? What did they spend money on? What were the results? What about this year? What did they do that they will implement? How are they implementing it now? How do they measure what they're implementing? What are they spending money on? And decide if it's something that may continue next year, or this is the opportunity to provide changes if you're not meeting those objectives. So it's an ongoing continuous cycle of improvement from one year to the next. That's our very strong recommendation for you as school site council members, to be an active participant, to ask questions, to ask where the data speaks, what programs schools are implementing, and how are they being measured. Because like we said earlier, this is your opportunity to determine what programs, what strategies, what actions the school will implement to help your students become college career ready when they finish high school. So those are the main parts of the school plan. Again, like Hector mentioned, to access your school plan, I've given you 3 options. If you can log on to LAUSD, you can download it. If not, on Monday, you can go to the school and request a hard copy. They can print a copy for the school plan for you to review, take home, share at your SSC meeting. Or number 3, you can email the principal or your Title I designee and request a copy electronically of the school plan. And here we're at Central. So I am Marty Barrios. I work with Oscar Salas, but here we have the other local districts for you to be familiar with and who they are. So I talked about the school plan. Hopefully that helps you better understand what the school plan is about, why there's a school plan, and as members of School Site Council, how to move forward to be a full participant in helping your student become college and career ready. So I think, Diana, Oscar, were there any other questions, Hector, that I can address now about the school plan, or was everything pretty much covered?
Everything was pretty much covered, Marty.
Thank you. Thank you for your assistance. And again, thank you for your participation in SSC. As we just went over the school plan. Next section, I know Oscar will be going over the budgeting, because budgeting is very important, how schools expend their programs in the classroom for their students.
Yeah, Marty, we have a couple minutes. I know we were able to get to all the questions. Did anyone see sort of some themes popping up that maybe Marty could address live?
Somebody had a comment about 20% tutoring. I just mentioned, if you're trying to provide tutoring for your students and only 20% students show up, but then what if 60% of your students are below grade level? That 20% is a low participation rate when 60% of your kids are not proficient. So you might rethink your intervention program. If you can't target after school program, then intervention should happen in the classroom during a school day. That's my point, because I saw a question about the 20% tutoring. That's only if, because I know I was high school, I always offered tutoring, and sometimes the kids I wanted to tutor didn't come out to school. Either they had a job, or maybe they play sports, or sometimes they had to take care of their younger brother or sister. So I did my best to provide the intervention during a school day while they were there. So it's rethinking how to implement the supports for our students. It's all about providing supports for our students.
There was a question, Mr. Barrios, and I'm sure it's going to be asked of you, Mr. Salas, about having access to these PowerPoints. I know that we can offer ours in a PDF form, but I'm wondering if you're able to get us yours so we can also offer them to others. Let us know. Thank you.
Yes, I'll make this PowerPoint available.
Yes, there were
Thank
many comments and questions about information being available. We will make sure to share all this information with our schools, with your community reps, so that it's available to our parents, not just our school site council members, but parents in general have access, that they have access to the plan. I know there was difficulty initially when folks were trying to log on to see school plans. There are issues with not being behind the firewall sometimes. It's not that certain folks don't have access, it just may be where you're logging in from. Schools can provide you copies of school plans, and you can also log in at the school site and be able to access that information as well.
Yes, that's true. Just this morning, I tried to log on to LAUSD to download a school plan. It won't let me because I'm at home. Yesterday at the office, I was able to download some school plans. So again, like Ms. Guerrero mentioned, because of the firewall, there are certain applications on our LAUSD website that we cannot access from home.
Thanks for addressing that. I just didn't want anyone to think that, like, because they're a parent, they can't access it, or because, you know, it just depends on where we're accessing that important information from. Thank you so much, Marty, for addressing our school site council members. That school plan is an essential piece of guiding the work of the school site council, and you will be constantly evaluating the prior year, working on the current year, and then eventually looking ahead to plan ahead. So we're constantly in that cycle of evaluation, monitoring, and planning. And as a school site administrator, that is important work that guides how we use our resources, our funds, for serving the needs of our students. So thank you again, Marty, for that thorough information for all of our stakeholders with us today. Just want to give a shout out also to our student school site council members. We do have students with us today who are serving on their school site councils, and I just wanted to give them a special shout out for spending their Saturday morning with us to build their capacity to be trained and to contribute to the decisions that are being made at their schools. Very important to your roles, students. So thank you so much for participating and for being with us here today. So we're going to move into our next presentation, which will be provided by Mr. Oscar Salas, who is also our local district central Title I coordinator. And let's learn about how the school plan, what we just heard about, works together with our financial planning.
Awesome. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today. Could I have access to share, please? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Is it the full screen or the one with my notes?
full screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's get started. So knowledge is power. And as you can see, there's a lot of information to go over. And Marty provided an excellent layout of the SPSA. And now I'm going to be going over the budget component. So again, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much. Okay, so this presentation is designed to help you develop a better understanding of the school's finances and how SSC and you play a role in deciding how the Title I funds will be used to best serve our students. And basically, sorry, here we go. Okay, so the purpose of Title I, School Site Council is tasked with overseeing the Title I program to ensure it's being used to its full purpose. Title I, as you may be aware, is a federally funded program that provides services to improving academic outcomes for low achieving students in all grade levels. It is designed to serve high poverty areas and allow for equity of services for our economically disadvantaged students. Want to make you aware of what is under your purview as an SSC member to ensure that all our children receive a high quality education and to close the achievement gap between children meeting the challenging state academic standards and those children who are not meeting those standards. When you get money from federal government, there can be a lot of strings, obviously. Just because one school is receiving Title I does not mean that they should get less general funds. So we want to make sure that you understand the purpose of Title I is to help those students that are struggling. There are two types of funds that schools receive. So one category is restricted and the other is unrestricted. The unrestricted is the general funds, TSP, donations, those types of funds. The more restricted ones are the specially funded programs. Such as special ed, cafeteria funds, and obviously the Title I funds. We will be focusing, and this presentation focuses on those restricted funds, especially or specifically Title I. For the purpose of our presentation, you have to have an understanding of what the general funds pay for. Those general funds are given to the schools to pay for the principal, the assistant principals, counseling services, maybe custodians, supplies, things of that nature. Those things that are necessary to run a school. The restricted are obviously going to be focusing on specific and supplemental services. So LA Unified School Districts and all schools, but for specifically LA Unified, Title I is identified as the Fund SL7SL46. That's for our school-wide program. Okay, there are two types. There's also targeted assistance. None of our schools at local district central are targeted assistance. This means that the Title I funds that are at the school are for all students to utilize. So very important to understand that. There's a Title I parent involvement component. So that's the EO46. And those funds are used to support parent engagement, parent outreach, and building parent capacity. Then some schools receive also comprehensive support and improvement funds. This is the CSI. And these are for schools that are state identified. And this is schools that are in need of improvement and usually are designated based on low graduation rates. Then there's middle schools. They receive the 17124, and that one's specifically for a college and career coach. And that's just for grades 6 through 7. Then there's additional funds for our EL programs, our EL learners, which is a 7T197. At local district, those funds are used to provide Title III coaches, okay? And those funds are allocated to schools with the greatest need for our EL students. Next slide. So each school must create a plan and determine and explain how we're going to use it. So to use those funds, there has to be an SPSA created. And an SPSA is basically your roadmap. It indicates everything that you purchase. It tells you where it's going to be and specifically identifies those expenditures. And if it's not, then there's always the potential of the school having to pay that back through general funds. So it's very important to delineate those strategies in the plan. And under Ed Code, as mentioned earlier, the development of SPSA is required. Okay, so school plans, as Marty went over, the plan has to be needs-based. It's based on a comprehensive evaluation and to determine how those dollars should be used to maximize the educational program. It has to be evaluated, and it has to be designed to meet the needs of all of the categorical programs. The plan, as stated earlier, it includes data. It has an analysis of data, and it also determines through the evaluation process as to what is working and what is not. And based on those assessments and that determination, there should be some adjustments to the modification of the plan as we go through the year as it's implemented. Okay, and let's go. Okay, so here's that cycle continuous improvement as Marty mentioned earlier. Right now, as all school sites are going through the implementation, obviously in the current year, but they're also finalizing their evaluation from the prior year. And shortly thereafter, we're going to begin conducting another comprehensive needs assessment and identifying what needs are going to be need to be addressed. And that would be the next component. And then based on that information, the school will develop some measurable objectives, identify strategies, and then ultimately in February, schools will start to build or develop their budgets based on those needs, and then ultimately they'll identify the expenditures. Okay, and that's the role that I'll be going over, or I'm going over, as it relates to the budget development process. Next slide. Here's a sample of the title page of an SPSA. Usually these SPSAs are about 70 pages long, and as mentioned earlier, they contain data. There's an analysis component, there's strategies, there's tasks and actions that will be implemented, and of course, the budget associated with the plan. As mentioned, the SPSA is a public document, and the school can show you how to access this. We can, as indicated earlier, you can access it online, or you can always reach out to the school and they can give you a copy. All right. Okay. So what you're looking at here is a sample of a completed approved SPSA page. On the left-hand side, you'll see a strategy. In the center, it tells you the status. In the middle, you see the beginning and end dates. And then the last column shows you how the strategy will be monitored. Then at the bottom, you see the budget item. In this case, it's Teacher X non-tutoring. So you'll see here in the strategy, if you can read that, it's basically indicating that the school is planning for 19 teachers to participate for a total of 20 hours of additional time for data analysis, professional time for data analysis and planning. And also they are allocating a total of $31,000 for this action or task. And then let's see, let me bring up the next one. Here is how the school plans to monitor. So here it indicates that the principal and coordinators will maintain agendas, sign-ins, handouts. Grade level college, CPA, TSP, college career coach will monitor academic marks. And the evidence of the implementation for strategies and lessons will be observed by administrators during classroom observation. So there's a process here where we're documenting that number one, the teachers are attending. They're going through the process of that planning and that PD. It identifies the individuals who are responsible to ensure that monitoring and evidence is gathered. And then the administrators are also observing the classrooms for implementation, which is the most important component of any PD. It gets from the planning, the learning, and eventually it has to trickle into the classroom. And then here at the bottom, you'll see that the budget that's being allocated is $31,635. So that's based on an average hourly rate. Currently, it's right here. It indicates $83.25, but actually the new rate is $90.18. And that's the average hourly rate because teachers are at different levels. So the district comes up with that average rate, and that's what we use to budget. So the actual expenditure may be a little less, maybe based on teacher experience and their hourly rate, and that includes their salary, their benefits, and all of those things that are associated with that extra time that they'll be providing services for. Okay. So we're at checkpoint 1. Let's stop here and see what questions might you have. And are there any questions at this moment?
I think everything's been answered. I
Great.
think you're good to go.
Thank you so much, Hector. Okay, we'll transition to the next slide. And here is, what you're looking at here is the 2022 SPSA Program and Budget Handbook. Within this handbook, you will see a lot of information as it pertains to the Title I program. Almost every bit of information that you'll need is there. And so after the school has looked at data and identified your measurable objectives, going through that cycle, identify those action and tasks, the stakeholders can now take the information and start making decisions about the budget items that will be needed. So to ensure that the measurable objectives that have been identified will be met. Remember, we discussed that Title I funds were restricted funds, so there are guidelines that need to be followed about how they can be used. And this program and handbook provides us with that specific guideline to help us make the appropriate budgetary decisions to support our plan. So when the school develops their budget, they need to remember that the budget items must be based on the needs assessment, the data. What did the analysis say? What were the inequities that were identified? What are the needs that need to be addressed? It must demonstrate a clear connection between the plan and the expenditures. So, for example, if the data indicated there's a need for PD, then you wouldn't budget for maybe a curricular trip, right? It needs to be aligned to those specific findings, and it must support the improvement of our students' academic achievement. So again, this resource will provide you all of the guidelines of all of the budgetary items that will be implemented to support those measurable objectives. Okay, so again, Title I funds must be used to support or supplement the school program, not supplant. Remember, we talked about those two specific or those two categories, the restricted and unrestricted. The unrestricted obviously pays for all of the things that are needed to open the school, run the school. And this Title I additional funds is to serve as a supplemental resource to augment the instructional program. So just because the district, every school gets their dollars, they can't take away the supplemental. So everybody gets what they need to run the school. The Title I funding is going to be based on the schools of the students that attend the school who qualify. And that's how we will get to what additional funds will be given to the schools to support them with those supplemental funds. The law indicates that the district should use these federal funds received under this part only to supplement the funds that would be in the absence of Title I, would be made available from state and local sources for the education purpose of students. So again, as mentioned earlier, these expenditures must be necessary as deemed by the data. They must be reasonable in the sense that they're not exorbitant, okay? And they must be allowable, okay? So we know that these federal funds and that means that they are heavily monitored. When we decide what we're going to purchase, we have to make sure it is necessary for the academic program and therefore explain in the plan that was created for the spending of these monies. Again, the prices must be reasonable. They cannot be outrageous. Amount to pay for whatever is we decide is best for our students. So necessary and reasonable. Very important. And of course, allowable, right? It has to be within the Title I program requirements. And that's what that resource, the budget handbook, everything within there is allowable. And that's going to be the basis for how the school decides to allocate or to budget those items to address the needs of those of the school based on the needs assessment. And then obviously, once the strategies are written, we want to make sure that we're designating the appropriate budget lines to support that implementation. So School Site Council has purview over these funds, which means that the other committees with other stakeholder groups can make recommendations to SSC, but how the budget and the funds are ultimately used is up to School Site Council, and they're the ones that approve the decisions and how these funds are used. So let's get into how we're identified as needing to receive Title I funds. Every year, information is reporting to CalPADS. It's the state system used to determine the school's Title I ranking. The system looks at the number of schools who qualify based on 3 criteria to determine that school's ranking and the amount each school receives for the Title I program. Lunch App is how schools get funds through LCFF and Title I. If kids don't turn in an app, schools won't get their funding. So it's very important that those are turned in. Their schools, for the 22-2023 school year, Title I ranking, the CBEST day was October 6, 2021. And the lunch applications will be due around October. October 5th, 2022 will be the CBEST day for 2023-2024. So the basis for next year's funding has already taken place based on the enrollment and that criteria based on the October 5th, 2022. The 3 criteria, first, the school was enrolled at the school day, at the school by census day or CBEST day. Second, they must be between the ages of 5 and 17 by the census day. And finally, that student completed the meal application and was determined to be eligible for free or reduced meals for 2023. We looked at the data from the previous year's census, which was October 6th, and next year's, like I said, this year's will be October 5th, or was October 5th. Okay, so what you're looking at here at your screen is a breakdown of the allocations received by the school. So if in scenario 1, where you see 100 to 65%, if the school's poverty rate falls within that range, then the allocation per student that qualified would be $913. If the poverty rate falls between 64.99 and 50%, then the per unit allocation would be, or per child allocation would be $690. And then the lowest tier is from 49.99 to 45%, and the per student allocation would be $522. And then down below, you'll see the EO46 allocation. This is the parent involvement funds. And, it's structured the same way based on the same poverty ranking. And then, but the rate is a lot lower, and that's $12 per student, $10 per student, and $8 per student based on the tier of percentage in which the students qualify. So here's an example. So for example, 100 students in the school and 85% of those students qualified for those 3 criteria, the ones we just discussed, the school would be receiving 85 students times 913, which equals $77,605. The same way, to determine the parent involvement, you would take those 85 students, multiply it times $12, and they would get $1,020 that would be used to support parent engagement. Okay, checkpoint 2, a lot of information. Let's check in with everyone, see if there's any questions.
I think we're taking care of everything in the chat and in the Q&A. So I think you are good to keep going.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so now we have discussed what we need to do to evaluate and analyze data to make decisions about how to best support our students in reaching grade level standards. We know that from the data, we develop measurable objectives, actions, and tasks, and then we identify those budget items that will support them. And SSC makes the decisions to approve that. The next step is to monitor and evaluate the plan and the progress of the plan. One of the first things SSC will do this school year, and we've already done it and we're still maybe working on it, is to evaluate last year's plan and decide if we met the measurable objectives for last year. As we move forward, this plan, we might want to make modifications of the plan based on the information we looked at regarding if we met those objectives last year. As an SSC, you will discuss the effectiveness of the program being implemented and are those programs working to, or do they need to be considered making, do we need to consider making changes? So again, all of the measurable implementation and improvement objectives that were designed last year and for the interface that we use and school sites use migrate to this year. And most schools or all schools are going through that process of evaluating those measurable objectives that were set forth. They're doing that by going through data, student data, or other data that was identified in the plan. And based on their analysis, then they can ascertain as to whether or not that goal was met. And if that goal was met, that's fantastic. Then that's something that we would consider continuing in the subsequent year, right? Or if it didn't work, that might be an indication that there might be a need for a change. So a very important process to continue to look at the data, and based on that data, you're able to ascertain as to whether or not there needs to be a change in the approach that's being taken to support student achievement at the school site. And remember, that evaluation is always 1 year behind. So in the current year, we're always evaluating the prior year. And as you know, it's been said multiple times, we're always kind of working in 3 years. We're looking at the current year as we're implementing and monitoring. But then, you know, we're also looking at the prior year and taking a look at whether or not those goals were met. And that analysis will indicate as to what changes need to be made going forward as we plan for next year's writing of the 2023-2024 plan. So keep that in mind. It's always 3 years in flux and in play. Okay. So talking about those changes as we go through the evaluation process and determine that maybe some things are not working and there's a need to modify, then there's a process that's available, and that's called the modification. So if there's a need to do modification, that conversation will be had in school site council. And based on those discussions and those conversations, then the school can initiate a modification. It could be a modification to the plan itself, or it can also be a modification to the budget as well. So as an example of a modification in a plan, let's just say, for example, during the budget and SPSA planning in the prior year, which is the current year, the school identified specific curricular trips and destinations. But, you know, data indicated or an opportunity came up that would benefit the students, and we need to add maybe a different location. That would be a reason why a school site might do a modification. And there's no need to move money because the money is already in place, but we need to do a modification and write and specifically delineate what that new strategy would be. In this case, it would be adding an additional or a different school curricular trip. Or there might be a need to actually change that. Let's just say there is no longer a need for curricular trips. Let's just say there's need for more tutor time. So then that process would be the same. The modification would delineate what the new strategy would be. And then that modification would also have to have a budget adjustment request where we would move the dollars out of curricular trip in this example and move it into the tutor time. So that process obviously needs to go through school site council. And once school site council agrees that change is needed, then the school would initiate a SPSA modification and corresponding budget adjustment if needed in that scenario. Here's what a sample SPSA modification looks like. And currently we're working in two, just so you're aware, and depends on your school. Some schools are going through a pilot program where they're doing the SPSA modification online through the platform. But then most of the schools are still doing the modification via this way, which is basically a Word document that's prepared after school site council determines that there's a need. That document, again, identifies the reason for the modification. It requires that the school provide the data that prompted that need. It has the school identify the goal area that will be addressed. It could be graduation, ELA, mathematics, EO program, whatever that may be. And also has to identify which focus area. Is it a lesson planning focus area? Is it effective classroom instruction? Is it an intervention? And also it must have the strategy, obviously, that delineates what that new modification would be. And sorry, hold on. And then also the person responsible for how that strategy will be monitored. It identifies the budget item number, the budget item name, and most importantly, the amount of the funds that will be moved. The final document will also require 3 signatures for the most part. It has the principal, it has the COSA, and then obviously myself or Marty will sign off on this program. If the school is doing a budget adjustment or modification under the EO46 program, then this document would be obviously the principal, the COSA, but then Ms. Guerrero would sign off as she is the administrator over PACE and oversees the EO46 and the parent engagement fund. So that's an example of what that document would look like. And again, all of these documents are maintained by the school site. So you as an SSC member would have access to these documents. We also upload the final signed version of this document to the SPSA platform. And it's the SPSA platform that we use. Obviously, it's access is available to the employees that enter the information, but at any given time, that information can be downloaded and provided to you as an SSC member. Here is what a sample budget signature form looks, or the budget adjustment request. It gives you all of the information as it pertains to the school, the budget development worksheet. It identifies the funds and how they're going to be moved. So again, this is the budget signature form. And again, that also requires the signature of the principal. It also provides an opportunity for the school to indicate the SSC date, the ELAC date, and also it also requires my signature or Marty's signature, the COSA signature, and the fiscal specialist. Okay, next slide. So just like the original plan, we need when a modification made, there's a need to be monitoring. This is monitored through all levels of LAUSD. The superintendent's monitoring the program, ASAP is monitoring the program, the LD superintendents monitor, the COSAs, the program, the principal is monitoring. Everyone involved is monitoring this, and we want to ensure that that the Title I program is always being monitored to make sure that we are in compliance with Title I requirements and obviously state and federal laws. So for more information, you can contact myself or your PACE administrator. Let me see, I think we have all our contact information here. I'll provide those resources. Let's see. So we have all of our support. Myself and Marty, as indicated earlier, we are at Local District Central, but also here's information with contact information for our partners at federal and state education programs, and they can provide additional insight or information if you're not getting the information that you need. But always reach out to us. We are available. First, start with your school. If your school is If you need more information, the school's not providing, you can always reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to assist in that process. Before we leave, just want to, before I finish my component, just want to make you aware, as indicated earlier, we have, on our LAUSD website, there's a site where you can go in and take a look at some of these budget documents. I'm going to go through the pages here, but I wanted to inform you, and as it was shared earlier, because of the data breach, some of these documents are still not available to you online, but it's just a matter of letting us know and we can get you whatever information you need, whether it's through the school side or you can reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. So if you were to go to the LAUSD website and click on Find a School, and then click on School Directory, it would take you to this page, and you would type in the school's name. Once you type in the school's name, you would hit the search button, and it'll take you here. And this one is Bell Senior High as an example. On the left-hand side, you see there's a link for the SPSA, so you can get the SPSA there. You just click on that plus sign, and it'll give you a drop-down menu. But if you needed information as it pertains to the budgets, you can click on the school spending report. And then that drop down will give you some options. You choose spending report, and this is what the spending report for that school would look like. You see on the left-hand side, all of the program codes are there. Specifically the 7SO46, you see what the total allocation was, the 1.9 million, 1.4 were for payroll encumbrances. These are, then there's the commitment encumbrances, and then their actual expenditures. And then that second to last column shows you how much is available. When you click on it, you can see in more detail more details in the spending report by line item, so you can see that information there. And again, it's all in the interest of transparency. All of that information is there and whoever has internet access can access this. And then once our ITD department mitigates all the issues with the breach, then all this information will be available to you. So hopefully sometime soon. Okay, and then there's a school allocation summary. Just go back to the previous page, click on school allocation summary, and then you can see a summary of all of the school budgets by program and by line item. Okay, and let's see. And then, so here are most frequently seen on the Title I and TSP budgets are the NCLB, the Title I, the parent involvement, which was at 70046. I mentioned earlier the college and career coach, that's the 7T124. And then there's the other learning opportunity summer. Those are district level budgets. And let me see what else we have here. Yeah, here's the local district discretionary, targeted student population, your TSP. All of those are examples of the budgets reports that are available to you. Okay. And then making sure that you're aware of what's going on, what's new, what's due as an SSC member. We invite you to visit the SSC LAUSD website and where you can click on what's new and what's due. There's a lot of information as to current and upcoming due dates. So you as an SSC member can stay up to date as to what the school should be working on, what the SSC should be working on to address and meet the Title I requirements. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll we'll open it up to any additional questions that have not been answered.
I think
We are working on. Go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just saying, Hector and Diana are working furiously to answer all the questions in the chat. So I think we're good. Did you see something, Hector, that needed to be addressed?
No, I was just about to say the same thing. I think I see Marty answering some of them in the chat, and we're taking care of the ones in the Q&A. So I think we're fine.
Yeah, there were some good questions on the chat as far as current year's funding. Can they continue next year? Rollover funds. So I've been responding to some of the very good questions.
Thank you, Marty. Anything that you need to address in live?
Well, I think carryover, they were concerned if they don't spend the money this year, does it carry over?
So for Title I, no, it needs to be expensed during the current year. So by June 2023, all Title I funds, EO46 funds must be expensed.
There was also a question about how the money is allocated in terms of, is it based on number of students or how do schools get funds?
Right. So the funding is based on the Title I ranking as it pertains to those three criteria that we identified. So based on the enrollment on that CBES date and the number of students that qualify, I provided that chart where it depending on where your school falls in on that tier system is how the allocation will be distributed. So if you're in that top tier, you're going to receive that $900 and something per student. And as you move down that tier, that number falls down. And that's available on the PowerPoint. Does that answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Oscar. Anything else? I know the team is working behind the scenes to feverishly respond to all those questions in the Q&A and the chat. And we know that as you go throughout the year, there will be certain situations, certain funding items, certain questions that will come up that may be very specific to your school site. And that's why we're here, right? That's why we're all here to continue to support you. So I hope you've been making notes of all that great contact information that's being shared. Those are your experts to support your work, to make sure that you are making decisions that are compliant and meeting the needs of the specific students that these funds are meant to address the needs of, to serve. And we have so much expertise in our audience, amongst our parents, amongst our school staff, school leaders, students, and as you work together as a team, sharing and collaborating, that expertise will come out. But we're always here to help. So please know to reach out if any specific questions come up. All of these resources, the recording of this presentation, all of this will be shared. And it will be available if you have a member that wasn't able to participate today. You can make sure that they watch the presentation, go through the slides, because there's really a lot of important information all packed into this one Saturday morning. Anything else for Oscar team before we move to our third and final workshop? All right, I'll take that as a no. Thank you again, Mr. Salas, for presenting to us today.
Thank you very much.
Learning more about how the plan, the budget, and the decisions and the constant monitoring all go hand in hand. All right, so we are going to move into our third presentation, and I would like to welcome Ms. Lisa Porter and Angie Cardenas from Parent Community Services, who are going to talk about, I love this, rules make it right. Love this title. These plans and structures of our meetings really help to hear all voices, and there's a reason for them. So I'm so glad that we're going to end with this piece and take it away to our PCS partners.
Thank you, Ms. Guerrero, and thank you, Local District Central, for having Ms. Cardenas and myself, and just say the PCS family. We are so privileged to be with you on such a beautiful Saturday. We thank you for joining us, and most of all, I want to reiterate what Marty said earlier. Thank you for being a part of your school site council. We really do appreciate you volunteering to support our schools. And of course, we know rules make it right. They do make it right. As we drive through the busy streets, can you just imagine? Take a moment and imagine if we did not have stop signs and we're trying to go at the same time, what kind of chaos that would create. Luckily, we have a red light, which means to stop. We have a green light, that means to go. And we also have the yellow light, which my husband always said, that technically means to stop as well, because it's a warning that the red light is approaching. So we're going to talk about rules to make it right, parliamentary procedure. Next slide, please. So the source that we're going to use today is about that. So we will do a lot of talking about this attachment. Have that wonderful book of Robert's Rules of Order, Parliamentary Procedure. However, we are not talking about the book in its entirety. We are just taking snippets from the book, and we have created an attachment queue for you. Next slide, please. So our objective today is to just cover some basic rules that's really going to help you in your meetings to avoid chaos, to avoid hurt feelings as much as possible, to avoid lack of understanding. We're going to review some basic terms and how to conduct a meeting, some procedural things we need to ensure that we're doing. And our ultimate goal is to prepare the team. And I say the team because you are a team. The SSC is a team. We're going to prepare you to support each other and having an effective and efficient meeting. Next slide, please. So here we give a little history about parliamentary procedures. You know, it happened way back when none of us on this Zoom was even thought about. I'm not going to even say even born. No one was thinking about you during that time that Henry M. Roberts, a U.S. Army general, saw the need that he needed to put together some rules that would help Parliament when they were having such a difficult time in running effective meetings. So we now have adopted this. Most organizations do refer to Robert's Rules of Order, Parliamentary Procedures to help them have more effective meetings, okay? The attachment that I refer to, attachment Q, please take the time to download the bulletin and review the rules that we have laid out for you. Next slide, please. Here is just a snippet of what Q looks like. So when you go to the new bulletin, if you do not see this screen, this attachment, then you're in the wrong bulletin. You may be in an old bulletin, right? So we wanted to make sure that you knew that this is exactly what it looks like. And guess what? It's not a lot of rules. It's not a lot of rules. So we tried to make it as simple for you as possible. Next slide, please. Here, my partner in crime, which is Angie Cardenas, is going to take us through a few of the basic parliamentary rules. Angie, take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Porter, and good morning, everyone. So like Ms. Porter said, these meetings, your meetings, they don't have to be complicated, difficult at all, but we do need some rules because without rules, it can be chaos. Everyone speaks up and, you know, everyone can say what they want, and then everybody is just gonna, you know, go crazy. So Robert Rules of Order, what are they? They are rules that keep us compliant, pertinent to the work that we do. So in the case of the school site council, it's all related to the rules in the school site council. Next. Oh, but before we go, I'm sorry, Miss Vilma, can you go back one slide? So this is a Robert Rules of Order, the edition that you can go forward. Yeah, this little book, this little brown book here, this is the Robert Rules of Order that we were referring to as well. But like Ms. Porter said, if you just stick to the attachment Q, it will be all right. Next. So the basic rules of parliamentary procedure. So this cycle is set up, or it exists to protect all the members of the council. It protects them in the sense that they all have the same equal voting rights, right? They have the same privileges, the obligations. It protects the minority because we know that the majority, we go with the majority rule, but it also protects the minority. And it allows everyone for full and free discussion of all motions, reports, and other items of business that we have at hand. Next. All right. So meetings shouldn't be complicated, right? They should not be complicated. They should be fun. They should be fun because we're getting together, we're breaking bread, and we're talking about the most important individuals in our lives, which is our students, our kids. So in doing business, the simplest and most direct procedures should be used, right? By referring to the parliamentary procedures. Logical precedence governs the introduction and disposition of motions. So we're going to learn how to introduce motions, how you can dispose of motions, right? And then one important thing to always remember that only one question can be considered at a time. And it's not a question that I'm going to ask Ms. Lisa Porter, right? A question is referred to the motion. So when you hear question, it's the motion, okay? In the parliamentary procedures world, question we refer to is a motion. Next. Okay, so we're still here with our basic rules, right? Members may not make a motion or speak in debate until they have raised their hand and have been recognized by the chairperson. Subsequently obtain the floor. So that's why we say that these rules are important, because we just can't start raising our hands, right? The chairperson has to be able to recognize who raised their hand first and what that person is proposing or saying. A member may speak a second time on the same question, on the same motion, if all the other members have been given the opportunity to speak at least one time on the same question. So if I make the motion, or I'm speaking, I'm debating, I'm part of the debate, I have to be very fair with my other peers. So I'm not going to speak a second time, prior to my other peers speaking for the very first time. So that's just what that tells us here. Next. Okay, now this is a real big one, right? And we can't take things personal, but we also want to be respectful and mindful of all of our peers, our members, our fellow members on the school site council. So members must not attack or question the motives of other members. Okay, all remarks are addressed to the presiding officer. In voting, members have the right to know at all times what motion is before the assembly and what affirmative and negative vote means. So for example, if I'm the maker of the motion, right, I'll propose that motion. But Ms. Porter, being my peer and another member of the council, should not attack me, the maker of the motion, right? Because I'm just putting that motion on the floor. It doesn't mean that I agree with what I'm bringing forward. What it means is that I feel that the topic is a good topic, a hot topic that must be discussed and debated. So I'm going to go ahead and put it forward. And just because I'm putting it forward and she doesn't agree, doesn't mean that she has a right to attack me, the member that brought the motion forward. Do not attack the member, okay, on the question, on that motion. Ms. Porter, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, Ms. Cardenas, thank you. I love the way you just explained that. The second part, in voting, members have the right to know at all times. This is very, very important because we're in the world of what? Virtual. We're in the world of us not being face to face. And sometimes in this virtual world, we have to step away, see about our children, maybe answer the door, right? And we may miss what was stated in that motion. So it is your responsibility as a member to ensure before you cast your vote, you know what the vote first of all, you know what the motion is, and then how your yes or no vote will affect whatever the motion is. That's very, very important. So don't vote if you're not sure. Say, Madam Chair, I'm not sure. I need clarity. Can you please explain to me what this means? Okay, I really want to stress that. Thank you, Ms. Cardenas.
Okay. Next.
We're going to continue with some basic terms. As you can see, we have voting here, pending questions. You may or not be familiar with that term, but we're going to talk a little bit about these things, these terms that you're using in your meetings and procedures that you're doing, you know, your agenda. Do you really understand what an agenda is? I believe the majority of you do. Next slide, please. So on these basic terms, we are not going to go through all 14, but we do have a question for you. In the chat, would you please indicate out of the 14 terms that you see on the screen, how many are you familiar with? Are you familiar with 1, 5, 10, or all 14? In the chat, let us know. And don't be shy.
Okay, we have someone that responded 10, 14, 8, 11, 9, 14, 12, 10, 14. We have some very knowledgeable people.
Excellent, excellent. Angie and I said that when we came to Local District Central, we would be coming to the smarties, the ones that were most familiar with these terms. And we see by your numbers that we were right. So thank you for being the smarties in Local District Central. Next slide, please. Okay, in the meeting. Ms. Cardenas, tell us about in the meeting, what takes place?
Okay, so as you all know, we're all living a new life, a new reality. And at the beginning of this school year, I know that as you guys were forming your committee and councils, you guys were coming together and reaching consensus as how you were going to continue meeting for your ELAC and your SSC meetings. So we hope that you all voted to meet in the way that you're meeting now. So if you are meeting via hybrid, then there's some procedures set up for that. So if you're meeting via Zoom, then we also continue with some procedures. So we're going to go ahead and continue with the next slide. Okay, so agenda. So what is an agenda? Okay, yes, we know that an agenda is that piece of paper that we put in the front of our schools prior to our meetings, right? But that agenda is very important to all of us because not only does it tell us, you know, gives us the order of a day, but it does have other information that is very important, right? It has information that lets us know when the meeting is taking place, where, and if you're meeting hybrid, it should state hybrid. If you're meeting in person, it should state, you know, give us the address, or Zoom, it should have the Zoom link. So it also should have your call to order, your public comment, and your quorum, and ending with adjournment as well. And it should have a list of items that you have for that particular meeting. Next. Okay, chairperson. Who is the chairperson and what does a chairperson do? So the chairman, chairperson, chairwoman is the person that is responsible for presiding over all your meetings at the school site, right? They're called usually the presiding officer. And your parliamentarian is that advisor, right? That little Jiminy Cricket that is like right in the ear of your chairperson, advising your officer, your presiding officer. And in this case, at the school site level is a voting member. So they do have that right to vote. So we have your chairperson and your parliamentarian. Next. Minutes. So this is one of my favorite slides and items. So many of you are very familiar with the minutes because the minutes are our official record of the meeting. It tells us what actions took place. And it's very important because now that we're living in this virtual world, we need to have these accessible for everybody, everyone, because sometimes we may have members that may not attend or do attend, and we have to have them available so that at the next meeting, when they are present, they have a record of what took place. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide and take a look at the minutes. Okay, and the minute template you saw in the previous slide, we have that available as well in our bulletin. So please download your bulletin because we have all these attachments for you, and it'll just make life much easier for you. So like I mentioned, the minutes they must have listed the type of meeting that we have, that the school is hosting, the adjournment, the name of the committee or council, in this case, school site council, the date of the meeting and the place. And it's not always going to be the same. So remember, if you're meeting hybrid, it should say hybrid meeting, and it should have the Zoom link available. Because when we do go through our state visits, they want to see every item. Do the minutes coincide with the agenda? So that's very important. Was a quorum established? And we're going to talk a little bit about a quorum a little later, but a quorum is very important because that is how you can continue as a council to make decisions. Whether the minutes of the previous meeting were approved, and that's also very important because if there was action that was taken either on budget, then we need to know at the following meeting if the follow-up with that. Motions, names of the members who introduced the motion, the names of the person that seconded the motion, and the vote, the result. The start time of our meeting and adjournment, and of course, the list of business according to our meeting agenda. So those are very important items that should always be reflected in your minutes, right? And your minutes should coincide your agenda. Next. Okay, so here's the famous quorum. So like I mentioned before, a quorum is very important because in order for us to make those decisions and move the work forward, the action forward, we have to have those people, the members of our council present at all times, okay? So here, just an explanation, the quorum, the majority of the membership that is more than 50% is the minimum number of members that must be present at a meeting or your meeting in order to conduct business and legally transact. So in this case, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, if you have a council of 10 members, what would our quorum be? Can you please just drop your answer in the chat? If we have a council of 10 members, what would your quorum be?
Awesome. I see 6, 5, 6, 6, 5, 6, 6. Lot of 6. At least 6.
At least 6.
7,
Okay.
10.
Okay. So if we have a school site council of 12 members, what would that number be? 12 members at a secondary school, perhaps?
I see 7, 7, 7. At least 7, 6.
All right. Miss Porter, you are right. These are our gifted students. Local District Central, they're on it. They're on it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue. Before we continue, are there any questions related to the quorum, number of quorum? No?
And you can just unmute yourself.
And the reason why I'm stopping here quickly is because we've had some some questions in the past about quorum. What constitutes a quorum? So I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. So just to remind everybody, a quorum is the 50% plus 1 of the membership of your council. Okay. All right.
So
So
if they had a membership, Ms. Cardenas, of 10 in your exam, what would be the quorum?
Okay, so can you repeat the question? Because you kind of froze a little bit.
I'm so sorry. If they had a membership of 10, what would be the quorum for them?
6.
Perfect. And
6
if
would
they
be the
had a
quorum.
membership of 12, what would be their quorum?
7.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. It was a question
Awesome.
in the chat.
No problem, no problem. That's what we're here. We're here to clarify and to share the wealth of learning. So thank you so much. So we're gonna go ahead and continue. Okay. Oh, and now it's time for our game, our SSC game. All right, so here we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna, we want to just check for understanding. We're gonna play a little game. What do I know? Okay, let's see. What do I know? So we're gonna go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm gonna ask you some questions, and I just want you to drop your answer in the chat. Okay. So which is the correct order for an agenda? So if you look here, we have A, call to order, approval of minutes, and establish quorum, or B, adjourn, public comment, approval of minutes, or C, call to order, public comment, and establish a quorum. So let's just go ahead and take about 20 seconds.
I see lots of C's. I see a
Okay,
few
okay,
A's.
wow.
See A or B.
Okay.
A, C, C, A. I mean, they're on fire.
Yes, they are. Yes, they
A and
are.
C.
That's letting us know that you guys are doing your due diligence of planning your agenda at the school site council or officers. So that's awesome. Great.
Someone wrote A, C, A, B. All right.
CAB. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So let me go ahead and reveal the answer. The answer is C. So if someone can just quickly unmute themselves, if you can they? Or do they have the capability? If not, I'll read it for them. The answer is C. So what we do is we call to order first, right? Then we allow our public members to speak under public comment and address our school site council on items pertinent to our school site council, we hope. And then we establish that quorum, right? We establish quorum. We cannot conduct business without establishing quorum, right? So that's the order. The answer is C. So thank you so much for participating. And we're going to go to the next slide. And we have another question for you. Okay, so
great point. That is a great point in the chat, Ms. Cardenas. Did you happen to see that one?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
It says the correct order, not which one comes first. It bounced off. That is a great point. Okay, can we go back? We want to make sure that we provide clarity.
Okay.
Which is the correct order for an agenda? That is the question. So let's provide this clarity so we all walk away today a little bit smarter. Okay.
Correct.
Now, A says call to order, approval of minutes, establish quorum. In order to approve your minutes, you have to have a quorum. That's an action. So that one can't be the correct one because we haven't established the quorum yet. We can't take action prior to knowing if we have a quorum. B says, let's end before we even start. It says to adjourn, have the public comment, and then approve the minutes after we've all gone home, right? So C says to call to order, public comment, established quorum. That is the correct way your agenda should look. The chair calls it to order. You allow the public to address the group prior to any action being taken. You establish the quorum, and then you move forward with any additional action items or business you have on your agenda. I hope that we have clarified for all of you that was, a little wondering there. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue. Question number 2. What should minutes contain? So I'm going to give you 26 seconds to read A, B, and C. and then give us your answer in the chat. Okay.
So Ms. Cardenas, I'm going to read them. I'm not sure if we have participants on the phone that may not be able to see what we
Correct.
have on the screen. So we want to remember that part as well. So what should minutes contain? A says only the chairperson's comment and a list of attendees. B, date, time, location of the meeting, quorum, action proposed and are taken, brief description of reports and presentation according to the agenda, and adjournment. C says date, time, location, adjournment only. What do we think it is? I see a lot of B's. B,
I
B,
do
B,
too.
B. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Yes.
And all of you that have indicated that the answer is B, you are correct. Go ahead and pat yourself on the back and say, see, I knew what it should be. Excellent work for you all. Thank you for answering that. That is correct. We should never, A is like a total no. We
Yes.
should never have minutes that only reflect what the chairperson has said. Please remember that the chairperson is the facilitator of the meeting. The members, in addition to the chairperson, who happens to be a member as well, things of importance should be recorded. The motions, those things that we have talked about, Ms. Cardenas have covered already. Those should be reflected. Now, it is a great idea because we're virtual now to include the names of the attendees. I would say that would be a great best practice to implement. That way everyone knows who was present, because right now, most of us have our camera off. We see your name, but we don't see that beautiful face. So that might be a best practice for us. Thank you, Angie, for letting me interject.
No, that's fine. And in addition to what Ms. Porter is saying as well, just remember, guys, minutes are very important. Yes, we do know, but they don't have to be very, you don't have to write pages and pages and pages and document every word for word. She said this, he said no. It's just you're recording the important actions that took place. Numbers, voting, who made the motion, like Ms. Porter just reiterated. You don't want to be stuck writing 7 pages of minutes, right? Because you have those accompanying documents, your data, you have your PowerPoint presentations, all that information will accompany those minutes, that report that records all the transactions of your meeting. So I just wanted to reiterate that because we've had, instances where, people stress out about it and then they don't want to be the secretary, and that's not what we want. We want to make it fun for you all and a learning experience. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents into that as well. So with that, yes, the answer was B, and we'll go ahead and continue. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's a true and false. To establish a quorum, you need 45% of the members present. In the chat, please drop your answer, whether it's true or false.
They're saying false.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a bonus. So if it's not 45%, then what percentage do we refer to? Drop that in the chat. Okay, I saw
a 50.
50.
Oh, I saw a 50 plus 1,
one.
50 plus
Okay,
1, 50% plus 1. Wow, why are we here, Angie? They got it.
They got it. Yes, the answer is false, and it is 50% plus 1. Yes. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and continue. Next slide, please. Okay, so now back to our regular scheduled programming, and I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Porter.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. You know what? I find this slide so abusing because if you are in my age group, which I will not share, however, when we had our old television sets, they would have this funny screen when something went wrong. They would pop this up. If you remember that, just write in the chat. Give me a thumbs up. How about that? Just give me a thumbs up if you remember that back in the day. Signing off. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Next slide, please. So to address the chair, it is very important when we're in our council meetings that we conduct ourselves in a very professional way, because it is serious business that we're taking care of and addressing the needs of our students. And so when we're addressing the chair, we should say, Madam Chairwoman or Mr. Chairman. I give this example often because it's a real example. My husband and I both served on my child's school site council at one point in our lives, and he was elected the chair. Now, I was elected the chair, and as much as I love when my husband calls me baby, during the meeting was not the most appropriate time to address me as baby, sweetheart, honey, sugar lips. That's not the correct way to address the chairperson. Even though they may be your mate, they may be your friend, they may be your cousin, your mom, if you're a student on there, mommy is not the appropriate way, to address them. So please be mindful to address them as Madam Chairwoman or Mr. Chairman. I did really love when he had to address me in such a formal way, because I don't get addressed that way at home, but I did appreciate it during the meeting. Obtaining the floor, being recognized, and having the floor. We group these three being very intentional with our grouping because they connect. In order for you to speak, you must obtain the floor from the chair. You have to be recognized by the chairperson in order to speak, right? And once you have the floor, that's your opportunity to speak. What is your concern? It doesn't always have to be a motion, but you may have a concern or a comment, right? Or a question for the presenter. That is when you have the opportunity to speak. So we were very intentional because they connect hand in hand. Next slide, please. Now we've talked about what a motion is. We know it's just a proposal, right? Something for the members to possibly take action on. It doesn't mean that that's going to be the whole way it goes, because there are some things that members can do to avoid taking action. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, about withdrawing a motion, okay? And as Angie explained earlier about a main motion, it's just the motion that brings forth business to the committee. That's all it is. It's just, hey, I want to bring this to you. I want you to think about what I'm saying. Or I've heard rumors. I've heard buzz about this, and I think we need to go ahead and take care of this and maybe put it to bed, put it to rest, as they say, a final time, right? Next slide, please. Pending questions. This was one of the ones that was on that funny looking slide when we first started this section. Pending question is a motion just waiting for a decision. Oh, I'm waiting. Oh, when will they get to me? This motion is looking at its watch. It's saying when, right? A previous question is a motion which, if adopted, orders immediate vote. Simple terms. We've discussed this motion. We've discussed it for 20 minutes. And we keep going around and around and around and around and around. And you as a member are saying, you know, we've done this already. I heard them say that they're being repetitive, they're being redundant. I call for the previous question. That means we need to stop and take an immediate vote on the motion. Now, you don't have to use that term. That's just Robert's term. We can just raise our hand and be recognized by the chair and say, Madam Chair or Mr. Chair, I'd like for us to take a vote right now on this motion, please. Same results should take place. It should stop the debate, and it should cause the chairperson to go ahead with carrying the motion through, asking for those that are in favor, those that are against, those that wish to abstain. Keep it in mind, the chair should repeat the motion prior to the actual vote taking place. That's just to provide that clarity for those of us that had to step away to deal with other things, right? All right, next slide, please. Okay, this is, as Angie has her favorite, this is one of my favorite slides, Ms. Carter. That's to second a motion. I get this question so many times. Well, if I second the motion, does that mean I'm going to vote in favor of the motion? That means I agree with the motion. Seconding the motion does not mean that you agree with the motion. You can be in total opposition of the motion. When you second a motion, you're just saying, hey, I think this is something worth us discussing, and we need a second in order to push it through so we can have that conversation about it. Okay, that's all that means. That does not mean I'm in favor of this and I want it. It does not mean that. After we get a second on the motion and the chair repeats the motion, that's when we go into debate, discussion over the motion. Let's be clear with this. When we are doing debate or discussion on a motion, we are to speak only to that motion, not the one we made last week and you're still upset about it, not the one that you were planning to make before this one came forth. We are to speak to what is before us. Let's put that to bed, and then we can move on with further action. But your focus should be on the motion, and as Ms. Cardenas said a little earlier, not on the maker of the motion, but on the actual motion and not on the person that seconded the motion, okay? It's on the motion, the proposed action, okay? Next slide. Seeing is believing. And I do believe that even though I wear these glasses and sometimes they don't give me all the right view when I look through them, however, we've added a wonderful little video for you that might help it to be a little more easy to understand, even though we think we're explaining it very simple, but sometimes a video is always fun, right? Miss Vilma, might you start the video for us?
Do you want to chair your next board meeting with confidence? Are you familiar with Robert's Rules of Order? Robert's Rules of Order is a set of rules and guidelines used to facilitate fair and effective meetings for many organizations. While applying a set of rules might seem like more work, using Robert's Rules of Order will make meetings efficient so that your board can get more done in less time. This can be very important when you have board members or presenters tying into meetings electronically. These tips and takeaways can help boards use Robert's Rules of Order to chair your next board meeting with confidence. To start a board meeting, the chairperson will announce the meeting will now come to order. The chair will follow through with agenda items, hear reports of officers, committees, and staff, ask for new and old business, and provide announcements. In order to conduct business, boards use motions. A motion is used to address a topic or idea to be discussed. Only one motion is to be discussed at a time. However, a board can approve several things at once after discussion. There are steps to use with every motion. First, a board member will raise a motion. Another board member will second a motion. The chair will then restate the motion and ask for discussion. After the board discusses the motion, after there's dialogue within the board on the item, the chair will ask for a vote on the motion, and then the chair will announce the results of the vote. There are tips and rules to remember on Robert's Rules of Order. Adkins and Company has developed a Robert's Rules of Order reference document that is available.
You can stop the video there, Vilma. Thank you so much. We just thought that this was a fun way to reiterate what we have already discussed with you. We ask that when you receive the PowerPoint that you do share it with your members that were not able to join us, even with your ELAC, so they can be familiar with these rules as well. You can go to the next slide, Ms. Vilma. Continuing with some of our basic terms, point of information, requesting information concerning a motion. Remember, I said early on, it is your responsibility to make sure you understand what the motion is before the group and how your vote will affect the outcome. That's very important. Don't vote for something if you're not clear of what you're voting for. Your vote is very important addressing any matter under school site council because it affects what happens at your school. Point of information, okay? Maybe you noticed an error in procedures, right? Maybe you noticed that the chairperson, simply by mistake, has voted twice. Well, we know that each member is only entitled to one vote. So if you notice an error in procedure, you would rise with the chair and say, point of order. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I noticed that you voted twice on this item. Might we revisit the vote, right? Very polite, just correcting something that was just a simple mistake, right? That's what point of order means. When you noticed an error in procedure, maybe you counted, as you were counting the votes, maybe you counted a member of the public because they raised their hand. They were in agreement with you. Well, we know the member of the public can't vote on any item before the jurisdiction of the SSC. So it's very important that you as a member speak up when you see certain errors, but please do it in the most respectful way. Next slide, please. One of my favorite here is public comment. Now we know that SSC offers, as well as ELAC offers, public comment to anyone that is not a member of the SSC. That means that if the coordinator at your school is not an official member of the school site council, that person can sign up under public comment. If a teacher is not a member, if a student is not a member, anyone that's not a member of the SSC may sign up for public comment. No member may sign up for public comment because your time to speak is during the meeting when you are following the rules and being acknowledged by the chair. This is the law. Under the Green Act, this is what we must follow, the open meeting law. Next slide, please. We provided a little form for you as usual. PCS coming through with some forms that'll help you in your meeting. You can use this if you're in person. Now we know that we're doing hybrid or 100% virtual. You can also add to that they can call your school office to sign up for public comment, or the coordinator, or if they're in the meeting and they didn't sign up through your school, when you get to that agenda item, you just ask, are there any members of the public that would like to speak under public comment? Remember, they're not required to sign up ahead of time, but it is a good idea in case you only have 2 speakers allotted for public comment. They're taking a chance. So we always encourage to announce that about public comment, and you'll find that on attachment S. Next slide, please. Angie, did you want to add? I'm so sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to address this question in the chat. They're
please.
asking, it's in Spanish, but I'm going to translate it. Luz, I'm sorry. I'll have Luz translate it because I don't want to read it wrong. Miss Luz, can you please help us with the translation with the question in the chat, please?
What types of comments can be made and about what?
Is it Luz or Grisel?
Ooh, that is a great question.
Okay.
Technically, it should be anything under the jurisdiction of the school site council. Anything related to single plan, attendance, anything that the school site council handles. That's the technical answer. Here's the reality. Many people come and speak under public comment and start talking about the food. They may be talking about the street, how you need a stop sign or speed bumps, right? We advise. Go ahead, Ms. Cardenas.
No, go ahead. Finish your statement, but we have another good question.
Okay.
These are good questions. I just
we
don't
love
want to
it.
let them go by.
Yes, we advise that you allow them to have their time If they're not attacking staff, persons like that, putting out personal information, let them have their 2 minutes. And we simply say, thank you, and move to the next speaker. Okay, I hope that addressed your question. All right, Ms. Cardenas?
The second question is, when can public comments be answered?
Awesome, awesome. You know
Good
what?
question
It
as well.
depends on what the question is, because we know under public comment, and you can go to the next slide, Ms. Vilma. We know under public comment that it is for them. See, I had a question here already. Somebody read my slides are ahead of me. I'm gonna wait. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna hold my answer, and I'm gonna let you all tell me true or false, okay? Here's the question. The school site council must respond in writing to comments and questions made during public comment. Is that true or false? Write it in the chat. Oh, I see a lot of false, 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 false. And the answer is false. Correct. School site council does not have to respond in writing to public comment, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to write in the chat now, which committee does school site council respond to in writing? That's a bonus question. But let me go and answer the question. If there is a request for information during public comment, that can be handled via the council honoring that request. Okay, thank you all for your ELAC response. That is correct. That can be handled during the council having the school, the coordinator, who's ever in charge, submit the requested material to that person. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's say that there's something under public comment and you all feel as a council, this is great. I love this information. Okay, as a member, under new business, you can raise that item that the person brought up under public comment. Example, let's say someone came to your school and they spoke under public comment and they really like to partner with you and offer free tutoring for your students. I know we have it now. This is just an example, right? And you all feel, oh, that's great. That would be wonderful for our students. They're going to get a free internet, which we provide already. You all know that. They're going to get a laptop, which we provide already. We know that as well. But this is my scenario, okay? Under new business, Angie, a member of SSC, can raise the person's public comment and say, hey, you know, somebody, Miss Vilma spoke under public comment and she said her company would do X, Y, and Z for our student. I'd like to have that as an agenda item for next month to invite that person back to present their program to us, right? This is how we address things that might come up under public comment that the council feels is very important for your school to hear more information about. Okay, I hope that makes a lot of sense. If it doesn't, please let me know and I could do a little better job in trying to explain it, or have my colleague Angie jump in and we'll tag team. Okay, any more questions in the chat? Because you know what, we're here for you. And if you have questions, we want to make sure that we address your questions.
No, we don't have questions in the chat. There's a few in the Q&A. I answered one, but I'm going to go. There's one here. Can comments about BSAP be given during public comments?
During an SSC meeting?
I don't want to call him out.
No. I'm just saying, yeah. I'm assuming because we're talking about SSC.
Yeah.
You can make a comment about BSAP if you like. You can make a comment, as I said earlier, about the stop sign or speed bumps. That is your 2 minutes to express yourself. So if that is something you want to bring up to the group, then yes, you can bring it up. However, the group has the right to not respond to that, right? If it's something they think they should take a deeper dive into, that is something the group, the council will decide. But sure, bring it up.
Right. And if I just may add, Ms. Porter, from my personal experience serving on the council at my child's school, years ago, you know, back then we were trained, and I'm gonna say I was trained as a member because I took off my employee hat and I put on my parent hat after hours. We were always informed by our principal and our coordinators that, you know, that the comments should be addressed to the council on items to influence the vote of those school site council members the day of the meeting, right? That's usually like what they would tell us over and over. Just some, you know, just some advice. They would say, you know, this is the time now to speak, you know, and to help us to influence how we may take a vote on these items on the agenda that impact our students. So, you know, that was one way to look at it, like, you know, and then it was nice to hear from our public folks, our public comment, because I was, you know, my kids were at a school where we had a lot of community that would contribute to my school. And we were so grateful and thankful that they had that interest and that they were, you know, that they were giving us love, giving our kids love. So I just wanna, you know, just bring that up to you guys as well. But like Ms. Porter said, all comments will be welcomed, you know, obviously, because you have that public members have that right to sign up and address the council. That's all I wanted to add, Ms. Porter. So with that,
excellent.
Yeah, with that, we have just another question about the BSAP.
I think
but
Ms.
there's an
Panosian answered that. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Panosian. Okay, so with that, we'll go on to the next slide, if everyone's okay with it. And I'll go ahead and take this slide, Ms. Porter, if you're okay with it. Okay, so recording the meeting. So who says we can't record meetings on Zoom? Yes, we can. We can record meetings on Zoom, but I will strongly recommend that you have it, you announce it and you have it posted somewhere like behind you, even like in our little virtual, like our little background, to say that the meeting will be recording, right? That the notice that there's recording in progress, because people have the right to know. People have the right to know that the meeting is being recorded. And I know sometimes parents will come in and record themselves. You know, they'll have their little device because, you know, they want to capture everything that's been shared at the meeting. And that's okay, as long as it doesn't interrupt the meeting, right? There's no, you know, there's no interruptions where we can't, you know, hear each other, where we can't see each other. So, so that's, you know, that's one of the things that recording is important for us, for the schools. It's important because then you have an additional piece of evidence that you held a meeting and that you dealt with the items that on your agenda, right? So it's really important that we do have a recording, that we have evidence. So, but just, you know, be mindful. This sheet you see here before you, we do have it in our attachments in our bulletin. It's been provided for all of our schools as well. So, you know, download the bulletin and just have it ready and available so that you can project it. Okay.
Ms. Cardenas, may I share something quickly? I had someone reach out to me and ask me to send them the bulletin, which I did. And they let me know that they were taking this particular screenshot of the recording, and they were going to make that their background. How we have our district backgrounds, they were going to make that part of their background. So I just wanted to share, maybe somebody may want to do that.
So Ms. Porter, I don't want to, I want to address this question in this comment. One of our participants said, for example, some parents at the school want to talk about the traffic, right? The traffic.
Yes.
And that we have in the morning and the afternoon. So those are important items that I think my recommendation that should be brought up to your principal, that can be addressed, perhaps coffee with the principal or another forum where you have the sufficient time to talk about that, because that is a very important issue that impacts all of our kids, right? But you may not have, you know, you may not have the time on a school site council meeting agenda to add that item there, right? But it should be on a forum I'm going to say on a platform like principal, copy with the principal where all the parents are there, or there's more parents that are attending, and that the principal can address that safety issue. It's a safety issue. And I know that the school site council has something to do with the safety plan.
Yes.
But that item is an item that I think it will be beneficial if the principal brought it to a bigger, more like a bigger group, you know, a bigger, where there's more time to talk about that extensively. Okay. Okay.
You
so,
had a question in the chat about who can record the meeting.
Okay, let's see. Let me go back because it just went up. Who has a right to record? The members or non-members? Yes, yes. The school has a right to record. Parents have the right to record as long as everyone's informed. Because there's some participants, maybe parents, that might not feel comfortable, right? And they have that right to say, I'm gonna stay, I'm okay, or I'm not okay with it, I'm gonna go. Okay, so that's their right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue because we have a few more slides and I know our time's coming up. So let's go to the next slide and we'll come back and address a few more questions if that's okay with you. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the steps to handling a motion. It doesn't have to be difficult, guys. Motions do not have to be difficult at all. So I know Miss Porter covered this early on. You know, it's very important for the member to obtain the floor, right? You're not just gonna blurt it out and say, I want to make a motion. You know, the chairperson does have to recognize the member. The member will state, you know, that motion, and it should be exactly how that member is stating that motion. It should be written on the motion form. Just like Ms. Porter said, very important, you need a second on that motion. You can't bring it forward. You can't bring it forward to the next step, right? Until you second that motion. So you have your maker of the motion, you have your person that's seconding the motion. Once the motion has been seconded, the chairperson will restate the motion because we want to be clear. We all want to be clear that the way the motion was proposed is the way where the chairperson's restating it. And then you open it up for discussion. You discuss the motion, right? And then you take a vote, and then the chairperson will announce the results. But I want to focus just a quick second on the discussion. So you may have motions that are very heated motions, that are very, you know, heated topics, and maybe everyone wants to speak, and that's great. That's great. However, if you know you're going to have a lot of members that want to speak on it, then just a recommendation, you can do it a couple of ways. You can set a time limit, or you can designate 3 people that will speak for the motion and 3 people that will speak against the motion. Okay, next. Okay, this is just one of the motion form that we have provided for you all. I know that we've shared it with all of our PACE teams. This is our new our motion form. Okay, and if you can, as you can see, all the important details are there. Who made the motion, who's seconding the motion, our membership here, who's going to vote. If it's like if they're voting for it, if they're voting against it, if they're abstaining, and if there's no response. We need to also record the no responses because, like Ms. Porter said, I may be in the meeting, but I'm probably at the door answering it. My mailman's dropping something off. I wasn't there. That needs to be recorded as well so that we're very transparent. Okay, next slide. Amending our motions. Once a motion has been restated by the chairperson, right, the maker has a right to modify his or motion after it has been restated by the chair. However, this modification may be made only by means of an amendment. So if I made a motion and Ms. Porter, for example, wants to amend my motion, you know, she has that right. But amending the motion lets us know that the process that we take when we amend motions is that the vote will be taken on the amending motion first, right? However she amended my motion, and if and we have to take a vote. If the motion passes, then we go ahead and then we take the second vote on the original motion. Okay, so that's how we amend the motions, and we have to take a vote, be very transparent, and record everything the way the way we took our steps. Okay, so that's very key. The vote is taken on the amended motion first, and then the original motion. Okay, because the secondary motion takes precedence. Next.
So Ms. Cardenas, they've given us our 1 minute.
Yes, I know, that's what I
warning.
was trying to. Okay, so go ahead, Ms. Porter. I'm gonna go ahead and let you step in.
Very quickly, and then we'll end with this because they'll share the video with you in the PowerPoint. But if a member wishes to withdraw a motion, it must be done prior to the chair restating the motion. That is very important that you do it prior to the chair restating. Why, Lisa? Because once the chair restates the motion, it no longer belongs to you, the maker. It now belongs to the body, the council. So it's very important that if you change your mind, do it before the chair restates the motion. On behalf of Angie Cardenas and the Office of Parent and Community Services, we thank you. We love the questions, and we love that you engage with us today, and go make it a great one. And thank you for serving on your school site council. Back to you, Megan.
Thank you. And we had some shout outs for your presentation, just as many teachers are in the audience, for making that interactive and fun. Lots of great information, but in a way that we could interact and engage and test our knowledge. So thank you so much, Parent Community Services, always our partner and supporting us to make sure that your councils run smoothly, compliantly, and include all voices. That's what these rules are for, right? Including all the voices and stakeholders. Very informative. There was a question, do you guys have a resource for a live video maybe that walks through what this looks like when a council, you showed a video, the animated video. Have you ever seen
We
one that's
do.
live?
We
Okay.
really do. I'm probably going to get my hand spanked, but I'm used to that.
Okay.
The Office of Parent and Community Service will be hosting a series of workshops for parliamentary procedures in the month of November. And we have an amazing in there. I'll share the video with you, Megan, and you can send it out to your schools. I think it's an amazing video that walks you through what we just have discussed.
Great. Yeah, sometimes it's just great to have that model and live, demonstration, just as we have different understandings of what does this look and sound like. So great to have that model. Thank you. We'll make sure to share that. All right, let's go back and there's some content. All right, so very important as we're wrapping up, you have stuck with us. You have listened and learned, and we want to hear your feedback. So in this evaluation, and the bit.ly will be dropped in the chat. You can see it there on the screen, bit.ly/SSC 2022/01. When you go into this evaluation form, two things. Please know that you can change the language. You'll see at the top that same little globe icon, and similar to the one we have in Zoom, and you can change that to Spanish if you would like to complete the evaluation in Spanish. Also, there is a portion of the evaluation that asks you for your role on the school site council. Please choose one. Please choose your specific role. And if you are a parent, not a member of school site council, but you are participating today, you can just choose parent. But if you're a parent and a member, please choose your specific role on school site council. Choose one. All right, next slide. This form, and we will also make this available in the chat. This form is available to our parents for reimbursement, meaning we can pay you an amount for if you needed to acquire any kind of childcare today. So even if you're online, if you needed help so that you could participate fully and acquired childcare that you needed to pay for, this form can be filled out to request reimbursement or partial reimbursement for that childcare service that you had today during this meeting. And we thank you for being here and taking your time. All right, and next slide. So very important. Part of this process is also hearing from the voices of our parents, staff, and students through the school experience survey, which is open right now. So on Monday, special Halloween edition of the Tech Talks and More that we do every Wednesday on here in Local District Central. But on Monday, we'll be having a special edition just to talk about the school experience survey. We're going to do 9 o'clock in English and 10 o'clock in Spanish. That's Monday at our regular Tech Talks and More link. And then I wanted to mention as well, November 7th, some of you asked, where can we get more information? Parents, we're going to do an additional SSC or council member training at a special Tech Talks and More on November 7th. And we will text you and share that information with you as well. So always wanting to follow up. We know that this is not a one and done kind of thing. There's always more to share, always more to learn. So November 7th, we will also bring you some additional training for council members. All right. And again, 11:30. We want to thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us here in Local District Central, from our partners at federal and state education programs, our partners at Parent Community Services, our Title I coordinators, all of our partners. I want to thank my PACE team, Parent and Community Engagement team, and everyone's work behind the scenes to answer questions. And again, thank you. Thank you for serving your schools. Thank you for serving your students at your schools and being here with us to learn this morning as you enter into making important decisions for our students in LA Unified and in Local District Central. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we will continue learning and teaching along with you as we move throughout the season with our school site councils. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.